Welcome to Reels on the Rocks, the show where your hosts Whiskey and Sweet Tea discuss film from the unpretentious perspective. We're opening the Reels on the Rocks vault and revisiting one of our lost episodes. So join us at our day job as clerks. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and as always, please be advised that spoilers are ahead.
How many was it, T?
Oh god, no.
How many?
Including you? No.
How many, T? Give everyone a number.
We'll just say 36. I think that's a good round number.
So Scorsese has sucked 36 dicks. Welcome back to the show, everybody.
It took a turn I wasn't expecting.
I know, that's why I was nice and vague about it.
I was vague.
But welcome back to Reels on the Rocks, where we are tackling our lost episodes. And as we will explain on our sister episode, what that essentially means is basically like years and years ago, when we had just started the show, T ended up moving away from Los Angeles, and we had to pivot to doing the show remotely. I feel like, I don't know, if anyone has stuck around for the show long enough to remember that, you'd probably remember it's like, oh, T's not here anymore, and then a few years ago it was me who left LA. So this was around the time when we had to figure out how to record remotely, because it's so crazy looking back at this, but we started the show super humble beginnings. We both lived in LA, so I would go to T's apartment, and we literally recorded sharing one microphone out of his closet. So when he moved away, like, I didn't have a lot of disposable income, so I tried this method of recording on my end, where I had like a shotgun mic for a camera that seemed to be able to plug in to an aux kind of thing on my old laptop. And, you know, when I was recording, it seemed like the audio waves were working. But according to T, it was just unusable audio. And then on top of that, like, we have this weird kind of setup. We figured things out by doing this for so many years, but like,
right.
We tried doing a call on like Skype and hearing each other that way, and that was a whole mess, and it did not work out. And we used to record 2 episodes at once, which this was also like before we started actually like pairing with like alcoholic beverages. I feel like that wouldn't work now, not just because our free time is kind of different than it was 5 years ago, but you would know that we were recording 2 episodes at once, because on one episode we would sound like we pre-gamed, probably.
Yeah. Well,
you know, so.
Well, and then, you know, and unfortunately, because we used to do them and we would sit down for 4 hours and do them, we didn't realize after we recorded both episodes that both weren't usable. So
yes,
it wasn't a case where we recorded one and we're like, what happened?
Yeah, and after seeing 2 movies and talking for 4 hours, it was just like, no. There was a time when we did re-record a full episode way early on, but that was just one episode, and you know, and frankly, like, I don't know, that would be a good revisit in the future, because that was a really good movie. There's still like an Amazon gift card on the line if anyone can figure out which one it is. I don't think we ever disclosed that, and no one's ever guessed because no one comments on our YouTube music thing. But anyway, so we did do that once, but after just like a tremendous amount of like watching the movies, talking for 4 hours, realizing it was unusable, it was kind of like, okay, I need to buy a microphone. We need to like figure out how to make this work, and we need to like make sure it's working in the future. And the next pairing, whatever it was after that, worked. We got it together. I got my own microphone. the rest is history. Ever since then, I've also gotten a new laptop, which severely improved the sound on my channel of audio. We've gone through all sorts of editors. This pairing is a very nice nostalgic look back. For years, we've been putting it off. T's been like, oh, we should do the lost episodes. And we've covered enough and grown enough as podcasters that I think it's worth going back. And it's also super funny because our pairings are like very thoughtful. Like the themes are they make sense, or they're fun.
Right.
And we before recording, we were like talking about how it's funny how it's like, what is the relationship between these? But we found out, for one thing, they're both Miramax movies.
Which I had a thought about that.
And then it was like the theming wasn't really the thing. It was kind of more the time of year. One thing we've gotten away from is sticking to an upload on a specific date. That's something we tried to do a lot more, but in the end, and I'll pass this along to any people thinking of podcasting, those deadlines are rough, and if you miss them, it's annoying. And also, who knows, like someone listening to this podcast might go back and listen to one of those, I don't know, our Friday the 13th episode, and it's like 5 years later, it's not on a Friday the 13th. Like it just doesn't translate. This isn't like a live broadcast. Right. So having like dated episodes doesn't really track as well as it would if it were like a television show or something. So we've gotten away from doing that. But for our sister episode, that episode is very much about Lent. This one, I was thinking would be a good 420 episode. But we'll put a pin in that there. And before going any further, what are you drinking with this film, T?
Well, actually, first I was going to say I thought about it, and I was like, we could call this pairing Miramax Madness. Like March Madness, but Miramax
March. If we even get it done by March.
So I'm having okay, so this is interesting. I'm trying something different this time. Hopefully it works out. So I made a shot instead of a full-on cocktail. I have a cider here to sip after I take the shot, but I couldn't resist this. This was too perfect. I made a BJ shot.
Ha! Snowball.
Oh, I should have looked that up. Oh my god. That's what I should have looked up. But it's just amaretto, like Bailey's and whipped cream. But I like all those things. So I was like, this is perfect. I have to do this. So that's what I will sip immediately. And then, I have my my cider, which seemed very convenience store casual.
Right. And I did this pairing non-alcoholic. So what I'm doing, I could have probably spiked this, but I went with a convenience store classic and got myself a slushie. Some stores have ices, some have slushies. This one, I stopped at a Shell station just for the slushie on my way home, and it was... I've never heard of this brand before. It's called a Frazil.
What?
Or a Frazil, right? So it's a blue raspberry slush drink.
You should have gotten a Buzz Ball.
Right? I mean, I could have loaded up on that. Also, maybe a pack of cigarettes. That's another kind of funny thing. Speaking of like time passing, just last week, I kind of privately celebrated my 2-year sobriety from tobacco.
Yay!
So that's another thing that I don't think I really have talked about on the show too much. I might have mentioned it before, but yeah, back when we started the show, I was a cigarette smoker, and I no longer am. So that's always nice. If my voice sounds less gravelly and more handsome, that's probably why as well. But the cigarette thing kind of comes back with this film. But if for some reason you are illiterate or didn't look at the title before clicking, we're talking about Clerks. That actually is almost like a joke from the movie too, like with all the customers with the big giant signs that they're not reading in the back. So, Clerks, the famous DIY project, Kevin Smith's directorial debut. It came out in, for some reason, on IMDb, it's got the French release date. I don't know why,
I
but
mean,
November
that's how
9th,
I watch it.
1994.
Class
Yeah.
it up.
Well, it's weird too because it kind of, if you've seen this movie, it's strange to say, but this was like a festival movie. Um, because it's got, it's got the soul of Harold and Kumar, but it's got the DNA of like a bunch of indie movies from the 90s, which is a good talking point for this later on because the 90s were kind of a big time for a lot of up and coming directors doing their own solo projects funded by themselves and their families and private investors and some, like, I'll name drop a few people, but Kevin Smith famously enrolled at the Toronto Film School, not Toronto, sorry, Vancouver Film School, and dropped out after only 4 months just to finance and film this movie. And the budget was a measly $27,000, but it grossed worldwide over 3 million, 3.1 roughly. So crazy profitability on that. Definitely helps that it was picked up by Miramax. Very small cast, just a couple of nameable people. So we've got Brian O'Halloran as Dante. We've got Jeff Anderson as Randall. We've got Marilyn Gigliotti as Veronica. We've got Lisa Spoonhour as Caitlin, Jason Mewes as Jay, and the director and writer Kevin Smith as Silent Bob. So I'll let you kind of explain what did you think the first time watching this, and what do you think this time? Because I think both episodes we kind of are talking about, like, this for
Right.
when we initially reviewed these, this was our first viewing of both movies, at least from the other person. I had seen
Right.
Clerks,
And
T
then
had
I'd seen
Chocolat, so
yeah.
there was sort of an initial reaction, and then, at least for me with our sister project, it was like, ooh, kind of revisiting. I had different thoughts, and I remembered how I felt, and T kept all of his notes, so I don't think he has any for this because this was my pick from that period. But yeah, what did you think, T?
I'm just double checking if I didn't write anything down. No, I didn't. Okay. So this was okay. So actually, I think it's good that we get a chance to revisit this because I know me. I probably was like, "This is stupid."
Yeah.
The first time I watched it.
Well, you would be right.
You would be right, yeah. So this I will be the first to admit, like watching it the first time, I didn't get it. I didn't understand, and I will say, admit, this is still not. I'm definitely not the target audience for this film, but because I actually did some slight research as far as like what people talk about this movie as, and they made a point. And this is what I had to do with this viewing. You kind of have to put yourself back into the mindset of 1994, the early 90s, and kind of view this more as something different, something you hadn't seen before. And I think once I did that this time, and I'm as you said, we've grown as people. And I know I've definitely grown as a watcher of movies since we first, because that was still like I think like our first year when we talked about this. And I can kind of appreciate this for what it is. It's not like my go-to for anything, but I had a good time this time, if that makes sense. I had a good time enjoying this movie this time. It was a nice revisit because there was stuff that I forgot about entirely. Now of course, I remembered Dante. I remembered his name's Randall, the guy next door.
Yep.
that comes over. I'm kind of just like, why are they paying him for? It's kind of like one of these. It definitely, like, I kind of view it as more of like a slice of life movie, really more than like a plot driven movie. But it's interesting. And I kind of, there were some people that were saying online that, maybe, it's a little dated. Yeah, it might be from a certain perspective, but I kind of think its discussions on life are kind of timeless.
Absolutely.
Now I did also read, I actually, I'd have to ask this: is this considered kind of a bro comedy?
Yeah, well, that's like the thing with Kevin Smith. Again, like it's funny. I think what makes this film interesting, and one thing that I knew was one of my biggest talking points when we initially reviewed this, because I don't keep my notes. I'll explain. Like, T has a notebook. I have a like binder with single sheets of paper, and so when I would, once the episode was out and I knew it was like done in air, online and everything, I would just throw my old notes away. So I don't have my old notes. Frankly, I probably would have thrown these away out of frustration because of the whole snafu with everything. So, I didn't have it, but I do remember a lot of like what I kind of wanted to discuss with this. And I think the most interesting thing about it is the DIY nature of this.
Yeah,
because Kevin Smith, the fact that he made this is actually incredibly like admirable. So, like, again, he was a kid when he made this. He was 22. I always love to bring up the fact that Steven Spielberg was 26 when he made Jaws, but Kevin Smith was 22 when he made this.
Suck it, Spielberg.
Film school dropout, and this was done old school ways. Like, I feel like a lot of, especially like young people today would probably watch this and be like, oh, in fact, that was kind of like a stereotype about quote unquote film school movies, is that they're all black and white.
Yeah.
And it got this kind of reputation for being artsy. That's not the case with this. The reason it's in black and white, youngins, kiddos, is that back in the day, if you were shooting on film, color film was more expensive than black and white film. And that's also why a lot of student films were shot in black and white. It was not because, it's so deep. It's because it was less pricey to just have a bunch more like black and white stock. And many people who have watched this movie, I'm sure, know the lore, but this convenience store was where Kevin Smith worked. And so he was 22. So the convenience store, I feel like we looked this up last time and we found out it's not there anymore. But for anyone who likes to go out to like filming locations and, take photos and, this is where this is the mall where Back to the Future, the time travel scene was shot, that sort of thing. The convenience store, whether it's there or not, was located in Leonardo, New Jersey at 58 Leonard Avenue. So that's where this was shot. And it was inside of a real convenience store that Kevin Smith worked in 1993. And it came out the year after, but he spent, the year, not even the year, we'll get to that. It was shot in 21 days, which is also crazy. And they could only film in the store during the time it was closed. So they shot the film between 10:30 p.m. and 5:30 a.m. So if there's any daylight shots, it was probably done in like golden hour, first thing in the morning, just, so that it would look lit or whatever, and you couldn't tell like if it was, later in the day. And then there were 2 additional pickup days. Those were probably for like cutaways, also for like the bit where they go to the funeral and stuff. That probably actually wasn't shot, during closing hours because, they went to some house that was supposed to be like a funeral home.
Right.
But the thing is, like, Kevin Smith, and that too. So he based a lot of the characters. Dante was based off of himself. And hilariously, Jay was based off of Jason Mewes, who ended up playing Jay. So he was basically playing a cartoonish version of himself. But most of the people were just random friends of his. In fact, the Russian metalhead guy plays 4 different roles in the movie. So it's just like a group of people, actually, just now I'm a guy in the store, and now I'm playing Snowball, and now I'm doing this and that. The only like legit actors I remember, and I didn't find the notes on this this time, but I do remember that Dante's girlfriend,
Veronica.
Marilyn Gigliotti, I remember she was like a legit actress who like auditioned for the role. And I'm pretty sure Brian O'Halloran was as well. I think those were like the only 2 quote unquote actors, and then everybody else was just friends of Kevin Smith. Like Jeff Anderson, I know was like one of his like friends and stuff like that. So at least I hope I'm remembering that correctly. This could be full of misinformation, but a lot of people know the lore. And it's the most like interesting thing about the movie, and you can kind of tell like he was probably watching a lot of like Cheech and Chong and like stupid like edgy movies, like this.
Right.
This definitely has more DNA with something like Porky's than it does with like I don't know, Garden State. What other like indie movies there were. But this was like a time that's super interesting because you also have like Robert Rodriguez. Famously, his film El Mariachi was like funded by his family. He just got random people to be in it. Like, obviously, this was kind of around the same, like, not an indie movie, but Quentin Tarantino was able to finance Reservoir Dogs. You had Darren Aronofsky getting loans from Jews in New York who were like family friends to finance his film Pi. So this was like just kind of part of the zeitgeist of 90s indie filmmakers, was like just doing it. And then a lot of these people got famous from just doing it. Literally 2 movies after this film, Kevin Smith would be nominated for a Best Original Script for Chasing Amy.
Oh,
so
wow.
Like by the end of the decade, he would be. I don't think he won. I'd have to look it up, but the fact he got an Oscar nomination as like some dude who wasn't even 30 yet, it goes to show how much you can learn from just making the art. And I think that's the most interesting thing about it. And I think it's also what holds this movie back, because it feels very sophomoric and stupid. And I think it's good because it kind of stays in its lane. It's not trying to be fine art. But because it's doing that, it is just kind of like a stupid stoner comedy movie, much like a Harold and Kumar or A Dude, Where's My Car, or like, those types of movies that came out later.
Well, I think that's one of the things that's the magic of this movie, is like it's not trying. It's like you said, it has that look of, like you said, like the film school, but it doesn't give itself airs. Like I feel like a lot of like first timer movies try to do. And
yeah,
I think that's part of Kevin Smith's writing style, is how good he is at creating something that is so enjoyable, and even in this case becomes a major part of pop culture, but it doesn't try to again to give itself airs. Make it like, oh, I'm so classy or sophisticated.
No.
Or even though there is lots of in-depth discussions about life and stuff, I love how like first off, I love how like sophisticated that sounds, life and stuff. There's it's about existence, purpose, and life, but it almost kind of feels like those were the afterthought conversations. Like really more of it was like the more, it's almost like he was more concerned, or at least the script gives the illusion that it was more concerned with the jokes and the banter than really trying to say something. And I think that's something that also makes this movie very approachable this many years later.
Yes. I think that was a wise decision on his part too. Like, something that has never changed about Kevin Smith over the years is that he knows that he's just a dude. Like he doesn't see himself as like a genius artist or something. Like he's just a guy who writes stuff he thinks is funny, and shoots the movie. Like he doesn't have a massive ego. And I think that is something that kind of saved him with this movie, because he, like you said, he focused on the jokes, and then, you know, any kind of wisdom that came out of it was more of just sort of critiquing the immaturity of this character or characters in this period of time. And that was something that was kind of funny too in the ending of this movie, is the characters who say the wisest things are like kind of the dumbest characters in the movie. And it's almost like they have more self-awareness than Dante does, who, and I mean, that's honestly kind of, it's ironic that Kevin Smith based Dante off of himself, because Dante's problem is that he takes everything too seriously.
You know, I kind of wonder, because like you said, now that you told me that Dante's based off of Kevin Smith, I kind of wonder if that's kind of what made the critiquing come across so much easier than it could have been, because perhaps these are conversations he has with himself a lot.
Most likely. If I remember correctly, like a lot of observations he makes about people in the movie are like situations or types of customers that he would get often as a clerk at the convenience store. And the humor has aged really well too. I don't know if you, because I remember a lot of our first discussion of this in the Lost episode was like me trying to convince you why it was funny. And that's kind of something
I've loosened up a little bit
later on. Well, so like one thing that has grown since is like you went out and you saw Clerks 3 when it came out. So you like sought it out and stuff, and you've been I guess you still haven't seen it, but you seem pretty interested in like Dogma. Frankly, I think Chasing Amy you would find interesting. That's the script that he was nominated for an Oscar for. It's basically about a comic artist who falls in love with a lesbian.
Interesting. Okay.
Hence Chasing Amy. And it's like it's done really well, because it's basically like him and this girl are like bros. And he knows that she's not attracted to him. It's pretty good, honestly. I would not call it high art, just like any of his other movies, but it is like an interesting concept, and it's treated with more respect than a lot of movies at the time. I believe that one came out in like 96 or 98. It was like in the later part of the 90s. But I feel like clearly you probably found this a lot funnier this time. I feel like the funniest jokes, the ones that got me this time, were just the observations about the different kinds of customers. I think the teens just loved all of the curse words and the crude humor.
Right.
You know, Snowball, he likes to have loads spit back into his mouth. And then you have, which still cracks me up, one of the darkest joke in the movie with Dante's side piece getting with a dead man in the bathroom.
His former flame, but
former flame. But yeah, like this, the stuff that cracks.
I've always wondered about that scene. I'm like, did she feel him finish? I was just like,
who knows?
That's so bizarre, because she's like so disturbed by the end, and I'm just like, what was happening in there?
Well, and that too, leading up to that scene is funny, where the guy's like, "Oh, hey, do you mind if I could use your bathroom?" "Yeah, sure, it's in the back."
And he just keeps
what
coming.
What kind of toilet paper do you have back there? It's like the cheap stuff. Oh, could you spare me one of the nice rolls? Okay, fine.
Now
what kind of pornos do you have back there? What kind of magazines for me to... And he's just like, you know, giving the guy an inch and he's taking a mile. And it's just that sort of stuff I find more funny now than like the crude stuff. What I
like about that is that's done so that you actually, I think even the first time I saw it, you forget that he's even in there.
Yep.
Like, so much time has passed. I mean, this is all within one day. You kind of forget that whole interaction happens.
Well, and I think it's done smartly. Like, I just mentioned how that interaction was really funny, and it's sort of framed as though that is the joke. We're done. We don't need to know anything about that customer anymore, because the joke is over. So you just sort of assume that he left. and that was like all that was going to be. So it does have that perfect. The other interesting thing, I'm always like raving about cinematography and blah blah blah. I think the editing was more important with this because all of the shots are incredibly boring. In fact, one scene is just an uncut shot of Dante. I believe it's Dante and Caitlin talking like towards the end of the movie, and the whole scene is just one uninterrupted shot.
Wow,
Which,
I actually didn't notice that.
But it's like static. It's not like an impressive shot. But it's the sort of thing that like a film student would do to like flex or whatever. But in this case, it was just because of the necessity. It's like we do not have time, nor do we have the resources to make like a cool creative shot. So here's the camera. You guys act. And there's a lot of that in this movie. In fact, that interaction I was just talking about with that man is also a full, uninterrupted, static shot. There's no cutting in between. And also it's well acted because the man goes out of the shot, and then when he comes back to ask for more stuff, he steps back into the shot. So it's like no editing required. Like you get the gist. And I think it also kind of works with the claustrophobic nature of being stuck in like a convenience store.
Right. You kind of, it's funny because the way that we see the outside of the store and the way that we see the inside of the store, you basically kind of forget there's anything else in the store except for this counter that Dante's at. You forget there's aisles, and then every so often they'll be like, oh yeah, the guy who needs to find the perfect batch of eggs. And then you're like, oh, where is there room for that? Because you kind of only in your mind are picturing this like 2x2 space with literally just like a walkway in front of the counter.
Right. Oh man, and that's what I mean too. Again, those interactions with people, it's like in that whole joke too, where the woman comes in, it's like, oh, is he a guidance counselor? I don't know. And then she goes off on this thing about how all these people with useless jobs like have mental breakdowns. And I forget. I remember guidance counselor. I think she also says like tax accountant, and like she lists all these jobs. It's like, oh yeah, they always.
And then she says what her job is, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds important. Okay.
Yep. We you know that you made a difference in that caged animal's life. And yeah, I mean, let's get into so. What jokes landed better for you this time? Like one thing I think, because stuff has changed since we last talked about this, not just us personally, but like the world has changed. And there's kind of this stereotype currently with like Zoomer employees. They have like that stare everyone's talking about, and the stereotype is like that they don't care about their job and they don't do a good job and they don't give the customer service that the boomers really want.
Right.
And the whole time watching this, I was like, Randall is like before his time. He's like a typical like Zoomer employee at like a McDonald's or something. Because that's like the stereotype too, is it's like they know they can't get fired. So as long as they don't just like do, that's like what the Zoomer
as long as they don't burn down the store, they're
well, like. And the stare that they talk about is like just being unemotional. It's like not being, you're supposed to smile at work and stuff, and it's just kind of this blank face. And Randall is like the funniest character for me this time around, just because he does not do his job and he does not care and he trolls people all the time, but he does it in this like very passive aggressive way where you can't really tell if he's, or like people don't pick up on the fact that he's being sarcastic. And just the way in which he does not care is so fun. Like with the video store, he's just watching TV the whole time. I know I mentioned it last time, but when he sells the 4-year-old girl the pack of cigarettes, just that scene always cracks me up, because it's like anyone would know, like, oh, hey, that's a child. But he's just not paying attention and just blindly gives her the pack and takes her money.
Right? No, and then so what's interesting about Randall is I feel like just based on when we first saw it and then when we saw it now, I feel like the way the world has changed, the framing of him as a character, I think even since it was created, has also changed. I kind of think he was originally at least when I saw it the first time, I understood him to kind of be more like a, what's the word I'm looking for?
Foil character?
Not foil character. He was kind of almost supposed to be kind of like, if this makes any sense to you, like almost like a folk hero kind of.
Yeah.
He's the one. He's kind of like what everyone kind of wishes they could do with their job, sort of a thing. And then now watching it, he's very much like, the humor comes from the fact that I think we've all run into a Randall at some point.
Or we've all felt like being a Randall at work.
Well, no, because I kind of, to me, I sort of feel like he was like almost sort of like an antagonist this time versus the first time. I was like, okay, he's hyping up the protagonist a little bit, that sort of stuff. I kind of almost feel like, and he's still funny. Like, I'm not saying he's not funny because of this, but I almost kind of feel like the framing of him when I watched it this time, he was more of an antagonist this time. Which Dante points out at the end, and then he also says because basically at the end, and this is one of the things that's interesting about Randall's character, and especially when you talk about his observationalism and the quote unquote zoomer look of him, is when Dante points out all the stuff he does that's wrong, he's like, well, yeah, but you did these things. So basically it's almost like, I'm washed of responsibility because you also do messed up things. It's this total shirking of any sort of responsibility. Even though I kind of feel like Randall does a lot of stuff to screw up Dante's life just in the space of this 8-hour day.
Kind of. Because I was watching the one thing that I know obviously probably came up last time we talked about this was like, what is not aged well? What's problematic? Jay says all of the F slurs.
Yes, I could do without the slurs, which I want to come back to that in a minute, but go on.
I'm just going to say with him, at least it's that character, because Jay is supposed to be kind of like a scumbag drug dealer. So like if he says something off color, don't necessarily find it funny, but it's like, yeah, he would be the one to say that, especially in 1994. Randall, the only thing I wasn't a fan of, but again, I don't know if he was being serious or if he was being sarcastic. There was like the time when Dante is talking about when Caitlin cheated on him by not cheating on him, where she, had sex with him and then said someone else's name and didn't realize it was him. And then it's like, oh, well, what happened to Dave or whatever the guy's name is that she called out? And it's like, oh, he ended up in a room with Stu, some other guy.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, and then Randall said he never said the F slur in the movie, but he did say something about like,
oh, she drove him to deviant lifestyles. Yeah.
And I was like, I don't like that, but I also can't tell if he's being serious, because that's like his thing too, is like he's very sarcastic, and it's like, is he like mocking the way people think of that, or is he genuinely saying that that's a deviant lifestyle? I don't know. If he earnestly meant that, then I'm not a fan of that, but it's hard to take him at face value, because most of the stuff he says, he's just trying to get a rise out of people.
Right. And actually when I said I want to circle back to this is what was interesting about watching, especially when I did a quick glance over what Chasing Amy was about, and basically what you said, Kevin Smith and his writing. And I'm just curious as to where this comes from. He has an interest in homosexuality. I'm not trying to be like he's closet. He's not. No. He has for whatever reason, observationally, he has this like interest in it with this woman here, and then just the comments and stuff that are made throughout this movie. It's like, this is definitely something that I see, and I'm trying to say this in a way I'm not trying to be like he's weird, but it's like there was definitely a curiosity about that a little bit, because it popped out a lot, especially for like a 90s movie. And I just found that interesting. I thought that was very progressive. And again, we talked about how Dante's kind of based on him. So a lot of sort of the critiques of these are probably all stuff he's wondered, thought about, talked about, questioned or whatever. And I just thought that was an interesting sort of, what's not even a plot, but like sort of just like a I forget, it's not symbol, it's something else, a motif that he has recurring throughout his work.
Yes. Yes, and that too. Like I'm not. I'd have to go to all of his movies, but I do think it does pop up a little bit. If I remember correctly, I think the main character in Dogma might be a lesbian. I don't know. I don't watch as many Kevin Smith movies as some people, but the guy has also grown quite a bit since this movie. Like, he's a very different guy. We've commented on he's lost a lot of weight.
Well, and I don't mean it like he was like, mean about it. It's just, there was clearly some sort of thought process that was going on in his early writing days, whether it was personally or creatively.
Well, and that's the thing too. I don't think you're trying to accuse him of that. That's another kind of different thing. Like, when
Kevin Smith, come out. No.
Come out. Well, like, when we did this film the first time, I don't think you were very familiar with his body of work or him as a person. You definitely are now. He's done you've watched some of like interviews with him and stuff, and again, you went out and saw Clerks 3, so know that he has grown a lot. And it's actually, I really like his relationship with his daughter.
Yes.
Part of the reason, and that's the other thing where I feel like he would also say a lot of things in this movie did not age well.
Well, according to what I read on Reddit, and again, it's Reddit, but people were talking, because I was still kind of trying to struggle to see, where people are coming from with this movie and like why it means so much to them. But one of the things they said is like, this was pre Judd Apatow bro comedies that like kind of just flooded the early 2000s. And I think they said that Kevin Smith has said, that Judd Apatow does those comedies better than he did.
Kinda. Like, one thing I will say about Kevin Smith, the thing that irritates me, I was really into the Judd Apatow stuff when I was like a teenager because they were kind of the big comedies out. But one thing I do not like about them is how freeform they are. The guy, and he's very candid about this, but Judd Apatow's directing style is that he comes up with a scenario and then he just has the actors improvise. And then he takes the best takes, like, ooh, I liked it when you did this. And they just, like, write the movie as they go. And if you watch a Judd Apatow movie, that's how they feel. They feel very much like we're making it up as we go along. I like that Kevin Smith actually knows what he's doing. Like, that sounds mean, but I like that he has a plan. Even with Clerks, it's like, I do think that he probably wrote a bunch of like funny ideas down, and then it's like, oh, we need to come up with a way to like tie these all together. What's the like main plot of the movie? But that is the big difference, I would say, with him and Judd Apatow is he writes his movies. Judd Apatow doesn't.
Shots fired.
Again, Judd Apatow is, like, he admits it. That's, like, his style.
Well,
and again,
at least Judd
really
Apatow has also admitted that most of his movies couldn't be made today.
Right.
Or at least one, or did he say unwatchable? So one of them said that. That might have been Seth Rogen that said that.
Well, and I would argue, this kind of goes into, like, what I was saying about the cinematography being kind of weak and stuff, is like Kevin Smith, I would say his strength as an artist is writing, because most of what is in this movie is just dialogue, and it's pretty good jokes for the most part. Again, very crude, but it's very like actor friendly, like this is the scene, this is what you're doing. He also has like clever ways of framing some scenes so that it's not just the same two shot all the time. One of my favorites is when Dante is doing his girlfriend's nails and they're sitting down behind the counter, and it's like, he's behind his girlfriend, she's like kind of in his lap and whatever. Like, that's just like something you could do, like, oh, how do we make this look interesting? And also that's like Dante's thing. In the morning, to avoid doing any real work, he just puts some change up, and he's like, take what you want, and leave whatever change in whatever and that's another thing. She's like, oh, how do you know they're being honest? And it's like, oh, people just want like coffee in the paper this time of morning, and when you tell them when
you leave money
they
out,
think they're being watched.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's he's very clever with this movie on finding ways of like not needing to do a lot of camera movement, just by having something quirky like that happen. But like on top of this, like, and on top of like getting an Oscar nomination a few years later, like he was sought after for his writing for a while. There's a famous story from the 90s, because of Tim Burton's popularity with the Batman movies. Warner Brothers was trying to reboot Superman in the 90s, and they were like, oh, who can we get to write the script? Well, Kevin Smith's a big comic book nerd, and he wrote a Superman script. So there was this failed project that was going to have Nicolas Cage play Superman, directed by Tim Burton, written by Kevin Smith. And it's weird. And you can the photo of Nick Cage in the costume is out there. He's got like long hair. And it was a weird script. Like, at one point, Superman was going to fight like a giant spider that's made out of kryptonite. Didn't end up happening, but that just kind of goes to show that, like, besides like stupid stoner comedies like this and Mallrats, like, he was actually seriously sought after as a screenwriter. And I do think that that's one of his skills as an artist.
I want to quickly do a quick retraction almost. I was just double checking something, and they don't list Kevin Smith as ever being nominated for an Academy Award.
Okay, thank you. Well,
There's he was nominated for other stuff for Chasing Amy, like in the Independent Spirit Award.
So, another fun fact about software back in the day is sometimes it would come packaged with stuff. So, at some point, I think it was the first time I ever bought Final Draft, it came with some screenplays. So I own Chasing Amy, not by choice, but because it came packaged with some software or something I bought.
It was the U2 album.
And that is why I was under that impression, because I could have sworn in this volume it said something about that. But maybe it was just the Independent Spirit Awards. And that's funny. I actually have... So it's a 2-pack. It's Clerks and Chasing Amy.
I did find this out, and I think this is important to talk about how important this film is. Because you've mentioned how you in the 90s, this was sort of the era of, like, make it up where, people would make their projects the best they can on their own. This is how they kind of, got their recognition and got noticed. This film... I do think it inspired a lot of other filmmakers, and in 2019 it was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry.
And I think that's fair. To be honest, like, it's for this genre of comedy, I think it is pretty good. I think it holds up pretty well.
I think you just have to get past the shock of just...
Well, and the funny thing is, by today's standards, I don't think it would be shocking at all. Like, here's a fun... We have 2 Harvey Weinstein fun facts for, like, this pairing. T had one for the last movie, and I've got one for this movie. But so the MPAA actually originally rated Clerks an NC-17, but, they couldn't have that because then it wouldn't make any money. So right. Harvey Weinstein hired Alan Dershowitz, who was like a famous civil liberties lawyer, maybe still is. I don't know if he still practices, but he was a big deal back in the day. And they hired him to argue the MPAA down to rating it an R, which they did. And what's cool is they rated it an R without Kevin Smith having to make any significant changes. But that to me is so interesting because there is a lot of foul language in this film, but nothing that I would be shocked to hear on YouTube these days. At least, yeah, like the Zoomers like to self-censor themselves, but like I've heard some vile language.
They have to stay advertiser friendly. I always like to point that out. People think they're being sensitive. This literally is a trend that came about because YouTube was demonetizing people from saying certain things, and it kind of just got picked up from there. It's into the cultural, lingo.
Which is true, but now you can say those things, at least a lot of things. Like, YouTube recently retracted that stuff.
Now it's habit. It's habit now. It's become the cultural lingo.
Which is what's funny to me. But my point is, I, maybe not on, commentary videos by 17-year-olds, but I hear some vile stuff on the internet. So when I go back to this movie, it's like I know that the language is, the soul, which is the other interesting thing. There's no nudity in this. There's no gore. There's no it is just bad language. That is the whole R-rated point of this movie. They'll talk about dicks and cum and everything, but you never see
as one does. No.
Right? But, well, and that's the other kind of funny thing, too, is, as foul as this is basically kind of what a lot of groups of friends would talk like in their early 20s. Even today, I mean, God, you're, again, not to get political, but you see all these, political groups at colleges getting, disbanded over, Nazi jokes and stuff like that. Not good, but I'm just saying, this is just kind of how 22-year-olds talk. Whether it's, in the 90s dropping F... Frankly, I mean, as I said, arguably, language is worse now than it was when this came out.
I think for me, at least, there's something about when they think... And I think it's when Dante talks with Veronica the first time. You kind of have to get... Like you said, it's not bad by today's standards, but there's something about it that's still... Oh wow, they're really going there with this. And I think I think there's still it's not shocking oh my god, I can't believe I'm watching this sort of a thing. It's just kind of it's spoken about so casually and so frankly that it's shocking that that's how casual and frank they're being. Because there's something about how the movie is set up. And then when we get to that first conversation, because that first kind of conversation really sort of sets the tone for the humor and everything in this movie, there is, I think, sort of a bit of a disconnect there, not in a bad way, but that's why it comes across as shocking, because the first 5 or 6 or 7 minutes or whatever the movie, you don't expect it to go there, and it does. And then
it keeps going there.
And then exactly, it's once you get there, it's kind of, it just becomes sort of I don't want to say white noise. That sounds like you tune it out, but you become just used to it. But and I also think, because I was about to say why NC-17, even with what they talk about, and I'm like, well, the U.S. has always been very much the type of place where, violences are, languages are, but when the moment you start talking about sex and sexuality, NC-17, even Brokeback Mountain famously, I think they wanted at one point for it to be an NC-17 movie. And you look at that and you compare it to 50 Shades, and it's nothing. But it was, it was just, sexuality is just still, it was and to an extent now still is taboo. We're kind of sort of trying to break that mold here in the US, but yeah.
And I'm reading the back, so I'm trying to figure out where I got that idea, the Chasing Amy. So Chasing Amy, it was not nominated for an Oscar, but what it is saying in my volume here is that it was a premiere selection at the 1997 Sundance Film Festival. So that's probably what I was thinking. It won some stuff at Sundance. And I was just talking about Kevin Smith's dialogue, and it says, Chasing Amy showcases Kevin Smith's keen ear for dialogue, his no-holds-barred take on friendships and relationships, and above all, his ability to see life a little askew with a sharp, sometimes confrontational sense of humor that makes him such a singular voice in film today. I think...
Go ahead. Finish your thoughts. I was about to switch thoughts, but go ahead, finish yours.
Well, speaking on his comedy, so right after or like last night, I sent you a message being like, "Here, watch this before we record
Right, the
tomorrow."
flying car.
So here's another thing. I definitely remember this part of the attempt to do this episode. So years ago, when we recorded this, I was doing research the way I could, and I was like, I know there is a scene from Clerks that was all over the internet when I was in middle school about a flying car. Was it in Clerks 2? Is it a deleted scene? I looked everywhere and I couldn't even find like the clip on YouTube. It was bizarre because I'm like, I know this existed. So I guess we've just gotten better at researching or something because I found it like in 2 seconds. Um, so this I mean, I feel like everyone who listens to the show based on our analytics, or you guys are like our age. So if anyone remembers Newgrounds or Albino Black Sheep or any of that, there was like this animation with Randall and Dante talking that was like all. I think I saw it on Albino Black Sheep, but I'm pretty sure it was on Newgrounds. And it was just this funny thing. I remember all the emo kids would quote it all the time. And I found it, and I sent it to T. So basically, in between Clerks 1 and 2, Kevin Smith did a little short film for the David Letterman show, and it like aired on the show. And it's basically Dante and Randall sitting in a car in bumper-to-bumper traffic, and Randall's doing what he does to Dante, which is like tricking him into like saying or doing something. But basically it's like what would you do for the flying car?
Yeah.
And he's goading him, like pretty much like Dante doesn't care about the flying car. It's like, oh, you're so selfish, you wouldn't do this, you wouldn't do that. But it keeps escalating. It's like, oh, then he has to hack off your foot, and then he's gonna diddle you when you're asleep. But I feel like that scene is like basically kind of the blueprint for the comedy for this movie because, like, as you said, like Randall, he's almost an antagonist, but he never really forces Dante into doing anything. He just kind of presents the opportunity for Dante to break the rules, and then Dante does it. Which again, it's kind of what I like about Randall in this movie, and I don't remember what I argued last time besides probably saying I thought he was funny, but technically he never does anything. The worst thing he does is like spit on the guy.
Well, then he sells the girl cigarettes and sticks Dante with the ticket. He screws up the funeral.
He didn't stick Dante with
the ticket.
Dante could have said, I closed the shop at 4:00. He didn't do that. Instead, he just lied and said, oh yeah, I was here. So again, technically that wasn't Randall. That was like Randall sold the cigarettes to the girl, but that's because he wasn't paying attention. And that's the other funny thing too, is when Dante's like, someone sold a little girl cigarettes, it's like, oh, like he's like he remembers the little girl and realizes what he did.
Yep.
But yeah, like the funny thing about Randall's
he makes Dante's life more difficult though.
He does,
yeah.
Kind of. Although, like one thing he does that I liked him a little bit for was telling Veronica that Dante was like talking to Caitlin. Frankly, Dante like cheating on his girlfriend is kind of the most unlikable thing out of any of the characters in the movie. And everybody, even Jay, who says the F slur multiple times, says like, "Oh man, that's kind of fucked up, man. That you're cheating on that girl." Like, and it makes no sense. This woman, and that's like a running joke too, is all of the times that she cheated on him. So like the one direct thing he does to make his life more difficult is like rat him out to his girlfriend. I'm sure some people listening would be like, oh, the bro code, blah, blah. But it is kind of like he says to Dante at the end of the movie, you got to shit or get off the pot. Like, who do you want to be with? Do you want to like stay with your girlfriend? Do you want to get with Caitlin? Like, you can't have both of them at the same time.
I have a theory about this, because especially since like, and I'm just thinking about this because you've talked about how Kevin Smith based Dante sort of on himself. So I think Dante at the time was reality Kevin Smith. And I think Randall was sort of, whether he was also Kevin Smith, but he was also sort of the self-destructive Kevin Smith.
Yes.
And then we had Silent Bob is the Kevin Smith that Kevin Smith wanted to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably about accurate. Minus the whole drug dealer thing.
I mean, to be fair, he wasn't the dealer. That was Jay. But Silent Bob was confident, even though he didn't talk. He was confident. He had standards. He had morals. He was able to be. He would go out and do the things he wanted to do. He really didn't really care much about what people thought of him. And there's a kind of all the things. It's just many of the insecurities that the Dante character had. And he didn't.
He does sort of.
He didn't really have to say anything to make these points. I mean, he has at the end where he basically kind of shows up at the end, sort of almost as like the prodigal guardian angel telling him, "Look, this is what it's like." It takes like almost like, it's like one of those things. Is like it takes a stranger telling you this stuff for you to actually finally get it. But that's kind of how I view that whole sort of thingy-majig. And when you really think about it, at first you look at this kind of like, it's like, oh, it's just a dumb stoner comedy. But you kind of look at the way that he developed all of these characters, and that's pretty profound to do that.
For sure.
If I'm correct.
Well, he succeeded in one thing. Like, so Jay and Silent Bob were kind of the characters that became sort of the most popular characters in the movie. Big thing was that dance scene towards the end of the movie.
Yep.
But I feel like that between the two of them, like, people liked Jay because he was funny and because he said crazy stuff, and I think people thought Silent Bob was like cool because he said nothing. And he just looked cool. So he succeeded in that for sure.
Of the pair, I think he's supposed to be the actual cool one. I mean, like, think back to like high school and stuff, and even college. The people who were loud and trying to be quote unquote cool usually were never the cool ones. It's usually the ones, like you said, who were, they didn't have to say anything. They just had that silent confidence, and that they were cool. So that's what I mean. I'm not saying they're not cool as characters. I'm saying
no. I got you.
Yeah.
It's well, and I also like how his advice is pretty short. Like, there's a couple of different bits of wisdom. So obviously there's what Randall says to Dante during their little fight. But what Silent Bob says, it's based on the whole Caitlin, Victoria, or Veronica thing. It's all he says is like, man, most girls will cheat on you. Not all of them like will bring you lasagna at work, or it's something to that extent. And it's just like a one sentence thing, and there's like so much depth to what he's saying. And there's so much weight. Because, like, it's not just that she is, like, a good girlfriend, which she is. She's one of the best characters in the movie, in my opinion. She defends him. She takes care of him. She encourages him to go back to school. But that's also kind of, like, Dante's problem in the movie is that he is set in his ways, and he is on rails to be in a dead-end job for the rest of his life.
He's also kind of a man-child.
Oh, yeah. No, well, and that's the funny thing, too. Again, he's so judgmental over everyone around him. And it's not like Randall, I think why he is kind of the folk hero or the likable one is he also thinks all of the customers suck, but he doesn't care. It's his apathy is what makes him funny, and it's also what makes him likable and cool. Whereas Dante just fixates on like, oh, can you believe I have to do this? All these people are so stupid, blah, blah, like... It's just like, no one's forcing you to do this. That's essentially kind of what Randall says at the end of the movie. It's like, you have no personal, you don't take responsibility for anything that happens to you in your life.
Yeah.
Which is also, like I said with Randall, besides talking to Veronica, he never forces him to do anything. It's all his choice to close down the store to play hockey, or to, and again with the cigarette thing, if he had just been honest and said, no, I closed down the store to go to a wake, or what, because that was the other thing too, is the guy said that the girl got the cigarettes around 4 o'clock, and the wake was like, he left to go to the wake at 4 o'clock.
But Randall went with him to the wake, so I don't think it was during the wake.
No, he did. I'm saying that that's just based on what the guy who was giving him the guy probably got the wrong time, or it was like right before they left or something like that. But my point is, like, he could have just said, like, I can't be here because I closed the store down. Like, I'll get in trouble with my boss, but I decided to go to a funeral. But yeah, it's again, it's more deep than you would think that it would be, but it doesn't take itself very seriously, and it's also all at the expense of this character who has just an inflated sense of self without having earned anything.
Right.
Like, and again, he didn't have to come in that day either. That's his catchphrase for the whole movie is,
I'm not even supposed to be here today.
I'm not even supposed to be here today. And it's like, okay, but you said yes. Like, you could have told your boss to kiss your ass, but you decided not to. So that's on you. That's not on your boss. That's not on the guy who flaked. That is on you. You are allowed to say no if it's your day off and you've been scheduled to have a day off. It's the same. Anyone listening to this show, you are allowed to say no to your boss. They probably aren't going to like it, but they can't fire you over it, and it's not your fault if someone else calls off.
Right.
So that's kind of Dante in a nutshell. And I was thinking of this with the dance scene too. I was talking a lot about the acting and the writing and stuff. The other thing that I don't think I picked up on last time watching this is the editing is really good. There were a couple of things that made me laugh just based on when there were cuts. Like at the very beginning, so there's the famous, like, the opening scene, which is another kind of thing that sets the stage for what kind of comedy this is, and where it actually is witty and not just relying on scatological humor. But like, so Dante opens the store, some guy comes in, buys a cup of coffee. Can I drink this here? Yeah, sure. And then he is just, anytime someone buys cigarettes, which that's a funny ongoing joke too, is like 90% of the people that come in there are just buying cigarettes. But he starts like talking about like, oh, I can't believe you could do, this is what your lung looks like. You're going to kill yourself, merchant of death, blah, blah, blah. But there's like a bit when he's like talking about like the danger of cigarettes, and it just cuts outside to like Jay and Silent Bob like puffing on like a giant blunt.
Yeah.
And it's something about like just the unrelatedness to that kind of cracks me up. And even the dancing scene from later, there's a bit of that. But like there's some clever cuts where it's like, again, there's not a lot of fanciness to the camera setups, but like they know when to cut away from the action to something unrelated. That's kind of, it's almost like that Eisenstein sort of like suggestion, creating like a connection in your brain sort of thing.
Yeah.
That I thought was actually pretty clever, and I don't know if I've ever picked up on that before, but I got a couple of laughs just based on some cuts like that.
There are just that was like a great sort of just like start to his day. It's like he just got here, and we already have this guy over here trying to grift off of their sales.
Well, and not only that, that's like such a funny thing too. So like he keeps going to the point where there's an angry mob pelting Dante with cigarettes, and then we find out, because he's been telling people like, "Oh, I get some Chuli's gum instead and whatever," and then Dante's saved by Veronica, and she tells the guy to freeze, and finds out
he's a sales rep.
He's a salesman for Chuli's gum, and so this was all just a ruse to get these people to buy gum instead of cigarettes.
And yeah. I did seek out, and I did watch again I call it the hidden ending. Actually, in a way, I'm going to say something controversial yet brave. I kind of wish that had been the ending.
It would have turned this into that pretentious art house, because the other thing about this movie, we said already that like, it doesn't come off like it thinks it's smarter than it is. But part of that is that it remembers that it's like a comedy. It doesn't, detract.
That is also
like
true. That would have been a huge tone shift.
So that would have turned it into what people like that it isn't. It would have been the black and white film school thing that thinks that it's more deep than it actually is, because that is sort of, it is like an impactful ending. The original, or I don't even know if it was the original or if it was just a different ending that they shot. But for anyone who doesn't know, and I'm so glad I asked about Clerks 3 to bring this up because it's a important piece of lore. But yeah, so originally, or again, maybe it was just like a different ending, but
It was
Dante,
the original ending.
the film,
I
film would have ended.
Go ahead.
The film would have ended. Basically, everything would have happened the same up until the end, where he's about to close, and then he's robbed at gunpoint and shot and dies, and that would have been the end of the movie. And it was supposed to be kind of like this, oh my god, he wasn't supposed to be here today kind of thing. And again, it would have changed everything. It would have made it weird too, because especially like the whole movie's a comedy, and then it just ends with this very dour ending. So I don't know. Like I'm sure the fan base probably debates about it.
But he even says he says in the movie that life is just full of downer endings. So it's not totally out of pocket. So when I watched it, I think it was from some documentary or maybe it was a feature or something, but it had Kevin Smith just talking about it briefly, and he said, that this was the ending, and then he said, and I think it was this guy John Pearson convinced him to cut it. So it cuts right after he throws the the sheet inside and says, "You're closed." Which also I think that kind of makes the ending not make sense, because he's basically standing there in the store still reading even though they're closed. I'm like, why? But
because he took the sheet down, so now everyone's not like the whole thing. Like the sheet said, "I assure you we're open," because he couldn't open the windows essentially,
which was great, so that they could shoot at night. I love that.
Exactly.
I love how that worked out, because you don't even think about that being a problem. No, but I mean, it's like, even like when the robber comes in, Dante's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, we're closed." I'm like, dude, why are you just standing behind the counter in the dark reading a magazine? Anyway, what I kind of liked about that ending, especially, and I keep going back to what you told me about Kevin Smith talking about how, because I do think this was really, really personal. I kind of feel like this was almost like a cathartic project for him. And I kind of almost wonder if Kevin Smith kind of viewed, this ending as to what would have happened if he hadn't decided to go out and be a filmmaker. Basically it does cross a little bit into pretend. I don't think it's that pretentious. It is more pretentious though than what it is. He basically would have just essentially, quote unquote, died here. Not like he was shot by a robber, but he would have basically just died here in this dead end job, with no relationships, no healthy relationships, no forward progress, not doing anything to improve himself.
Yep. And I think it's kind of hitting on the same points as the ending that we got. It's just doing it in much more of like,
it's very on the nose.
It's very cynical too.
Yeah.
Like the thing about this is he just kind of gets talked to by a bunch of his friends calling him an idiot. And again, it's like, that's the thing with his girlfriend. It's like, or Randall, is they're all telling him, it's like, you need to do something about your life. You can't just complain about it all the time. Again, that's like the whole point of the movie. So, having him get killed makes the same point, where it's like, because you didn't act, like this is where you will end up, dying, or like this will be your dead end job.
You're right. I think you're right. It's too much. It's like gilding the lily.
Well, and it also just the tonal shift, I think, would have made people upset, or maybe not upset. I don't think people would have liked this movie if that was how it ended.
Yeah.
Because this was like the college crowd dug this movie. It was like, an indie darling that went through the festival scene. It got picked up by Miramax, like all of this.
It was
other
shown
stuff.
at Cannes.
Exactly. So like it's that, but it's also, hey, this is a funny movie. This is like, oh my god, I don't know what kind of stupid college movies were coming out in the early '90s, but this is like Euro Trip or something like that.
It's Clueless. No, I'm just kidding.
American Pie.
Yeah, there you go.
It's just it's trying to be like that kind of movie, and I think that was sort of a nice like Venn diagram of like the artsy film school people and the jocks, the party guys, the bros.
Well, and
like
I
there
think
was a nice little overlap of like, oh, it's an artsy, like it's art, but it's also like a funny, stupid movie.
well, and I
That
think
doesn't take itself too seriously.
And I think, like I said, I think the reason why it resonated so well and it's so enduring is the fact that it had a lot to say, but the movie's purpose wasn't that it had a lot to say. It was to be entertaining. And
Yes.
by focusing on being entertaining first, it really kind of allowed the messages and stuff to kind of sink in more. It's kind of like it was more like having a conversation instead of being talked at.
Yes. Other thing I want to hit on before I forget. Um, so you don't remember Clerks 3. What other Kevin Smith movies have you seen? Is it just this?
I think it's just this, but I was reading his bio. He's directed, sitcom episodes. I know I've seen some of his work there, but
Okay.
I do know when I was younger, I think I was in it was in middle school or high school. I think it was high school because YouTube had been established by then. I do remember seeing some of the clips from the Jay and the Silent Bob movies
Oh,
get circulated around.
there's some good ones. They fight Mark Hamill with a dildo lightsaber. That movie's an interesting one. It's a fan favorite for sure. But the in this day and age, and I'm sure I touched on this in the original version of this episode, but Kevin Smith was kind of ahead of the curve as far as cinematic universes. The only other Tarantino was also active at this time, so it's not. I don't know if they just both had the same idea or if one copied the other. Frankly, I think that Kevin Smith. It's hard to say. Their careers kind of started at the same time.
They overlap.
But basically, all of Kevin Smith's movies, same as Tarantino's, they all occur in the same cinematic universe.
Okay.
So Jay and Silent Bob are in multiple movies because all of the movies are in, and he got this idea from Marvel Comics, which is why I bring it up, because now the cinematic universe thing is like a trend.
Yeah.
All these different studios have it. Marvel's like the big one. But the View Askewniverse, so like the next film, right? The next film that came out was Mallrats, then Chasing Amy, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, Clerks 2, Dogma. Like all of these movies of his, they all share the same universe. So there's like brands in the movies that are fake. Like I remember there's a fast food chain called like Movies, I think is what it is. But it's like the mascot is a cow and it's like movie themed, which is weird. But a few years ago, this was like around the time when we recorded the episode, but he actually did a pop-up in Los Angeles of that fake fast food chain, and he had vegan options. It was like a whole thing.
Oh, that's right. He's vegan now, right?
Yeah, which is, again, it wasn't like a political thing. Maybe it was for his daughter. He did it to like bond with her because she was vegan, and it was before he lost all the weight. So yeah, like it's more of like my daughter's vegan and I want to kind of connect with her. But yeah, he is vegan. Maybe he cheats every so often, but that was a thing. Because I remember they had like a vegan chicken sandwich. I think that was also going on at the time. This was like during the Popeyes thing. Anyway.
Oh yeah, the Popeyes chicken sandwich. Yep.
But yeah, like so Tarantino did the same thing. I know like in Tarantino films, like as far as fake brands go, there's Red Apple cigarettes, and then there's all sorts of different things. But that's kind of another thing that I don't know if people remember as much, especially like younger people. Is like he was kind of the forerunner for cinematic universes with his silly little comedies.
Right. He kind of got in on the ground level.
Well, and it worked that way too. And speaking of Marvel, so Mallrats is what followed up on this. And I'll keep it brief. Frankly, I don't like Mallrats very much. I know for Kevin Smith heads, that's like blasphemy. Famously, it bombed. Also, like this was a critical darling. It did well in the festivals. It was sort of like, oh, isn't this amazing? A 22-year-old film school dropout made Clerks. Mallrats was not critically successful nor commercially successful, but it did have a Stan Lee cameo.
Really?
So one of the whole point.
Oh my god, he's literally on the cover of the DVD.
He's literally on the cover of the DVD. Like, if I remember correctly, the whole reason they're at the mall. One of the characters is like a comic book nerd, and Stan Lee is supposed to be doing a signing there.
Mm-hmm.
And then at like one point near the end of the movie, he misses the signing, and it's like, oh no! But then Stan Lee just bumps into him outside and gives him some sage advice about his failing relationship, and that's like the whole thing in the movie.
Okay.
But that's another kind of neat thing. His second movie, he got Stan Lee to be in it. And obviously this was before, because Stan Lee was always the creator of Marvel Comics, but he was not this recognizable like guy that he is now. Like a whole generation of kids know who Stan Lee is just because of the Marvel movies. But back in the day, it was like...
It was because of Mallrats.
Well, Kevin Smith, it was probably like having Marlon Brando in your movie or something. But again, like in 1996 or whenever Mallrats came out, it was like, who?
Stanley who? 1995.
I mean, that's a crazy thing to think about too. Marvel almost went bankrupt in the 90s. Part of the reason Fox owned a bunch of the properties up until Disney bought them back was because Marvel was selling television and film rights to keep the
studio
magazine afloat.
Yeah.
Well, not even studio though, because at that point it was still just like a publishing house. But yeah, like they were about to go out of business. So like, yeah, it's crazy. Stan Lee now, this big famous guy, but like in 1996, people, unless you were into comics, you wouldn't know who he was.
Wow.
But that's the other thing. Again, Mallrats, great highs to chasmy lows in the movie business. And then he was back up at the top with Chasing Amy. You know, was at Sundance. Did not get nominated for an Academy Award, but it did win a bunch of other little awards. And with that, I think I've kind of exhausted all of my talking points. So was there anything you would like to bring up that I didn't think about?
I don't have anything to add at this point, except, you know, I'm just glad that we got to revisit this because I have a better appreciation for it now than I did the first time we saw it.
Same. And I think it's also kind of interesting because I can't remember when the last time I had seen it before our previous review had been. It had literally maybe been a decade or something. It's been a number of years. I think this is 5 years since we recorded those episodes.
Yeah.
So it's been a while, but it hasn't been that long. And I, just like Chocolat, was looking forward to watching this one again. And it didn't disappoint. I actually think I thought it was probably funnier than last time. Again, maybe it's because I've aged a bit. Maybe it's because I'm working in retail again, but it wasn't even the filthy jokes. It was just like all of the, mundane sort of observations about stupid customers that I thought was the funniest bits in the movie, because it's still, 30 years later and people are still not seeing the signage. They're still asking stupid questions. They're still being creepy. They're still trying to, get as much from you as possible, or like, shortchange you or whatever. Like every little thing he made fun of with customers was still super funny.
So just out of curiosity, when a customer comes into your store and asks to use your bathroom, what product do you hand him?
In my store, I mean, we don't really have anything that I'd tell them to get out, because we don't have a bathroom for one thing. What I would do is I'd get on the phone with my boss and I'd list off a bunch of porno titles in front of their young child to get them to leave. No,
oh, I'm
but
sorry, what
yeah,
did you
what
want
would
again?
it? Right. Yeah, which that too. The fake title for that movie was like the Happy Scrappy Puppy or something like
Right.
that. Happy Scrappy Hero Pup.
My favorite part is the
But
woman just stands there with her child, just listens the whole time. Just like, girl, leave the store.
that must be such a relic to video stores, because I remember, I think I might have even brought this up when we recorded it before, but I miss stuff like Suncoast. We're a little closer in age, but were you too young to know what a Suncoast was at the mall, or do you know what that was, the video store?
So we had video stores. We didn't have a Suncoast.
It was a chain essentially, so it was like a brand of video store. It wasn't like Blockbuster, like you couldn't rent things, but you bought movies. And I remember there was the restricted section at Suncoast that had the porn. So like it's trippy. It's because same deal if you went to like Blockbuster or Hollywood Video or whatever, you could rent porn if you were over 18, but you had to show ID and stuff. So it's one of those trippy blasts from the past to think of. It's like, oh yeah, he would have to order that stuff from the distributor, and he'd probably have to look in a catalog and like, oh, what have customers asked about and stuff like that.
Which I have a theory. I have a theory that he wasn't actually on the phone with the distributor, and he was just wanted to troll those people.
Oh, that's the beauty of Randall. It's probably because if he was on the phone with the distributor, that would also suggest that he was doing his job.
Right?
Oh man, and that too. Like, I bet you $20 you won't get to rent that movie.
He's the one that's running.
Little does she know.
Right.
Well, with that being said, what would you rate this movie, T?
Okay. I'm actually going to... Earlier, me probably would have said 2. I'm going to give this a 3 because it's a good movie when you really appreciate... Like I said, this is still not my type of movie. This is what I would reach for all the time, but I really sort of appreciate what he was able to pull off and that he did it well. And like I said, there is a lot of depth still to this movie, and I just think that's incredible, and like how this has gone on to inspire so many people. So I'm gonna go ahead and give this a 3 out of 4 pitchers of sweet tea.
And I'm gonna go ahead and echo that too. Like, as unlike our sister film that we're reviewing, this doesn't have kind of that quality or like this is not an Oscar-nominated film, but
like for example, there's very much a scene if you watch that you can kind of see Randall waiting off screen to come into the shot.
Oh, there's tons of gaffes.
Yeah.
Like if you sit down and like watch carefully, like we didn't get into it as much about the production, but like they were editing this in like the back room of the convenience store. There's stories like, because you had to develop film, they would be hanging the developing film strands like in the aisles of the video store, because you had to do that kind of stuff. And they were like, because you had to physically cut the film. And this wasn't like back when you would have like Final Cut or Premiere or whatever.
Yep.
So there's that whole aspect of the production. But yeah, no, like what he was able to accomplish with $27,000, being able to make millions of dollars, get signed to Miramax, basically jumpstart his career and avoid having all of those student loans from Vancouver Film School.
And
it's really admirable.
And he stood up to Scorsese. So Kevin Smith always has my heart.
There you go. Yeah. Scorsese in his 37. No.
Kevin Smith was the 37th.
It's really the one thing, like, and I'm sure, if you're younger, we don't have younger listeners on this show, but if you were younger, there's some stuff that definitely has not aged very well. There's some homophobic slurs. There's like, the crude humor and stuff. There's some slut
shaming. There's a little bit of
that. Although I will
male
say
insecurity over female sexuality.
I will say though that is the joke.
That is true. It is,
because it is making fun of the fact that Dante, like, it's observational in the fact that it's like men and women don't see that the same.
Yeah.
But it's also making fun of Dante because it's like, well, you know, like the only thing is like he made it kind of a big number just to make it like, you know, even if she had just said 12, the same as Dante, it wouldn't have been as funny as if it was like 50 or something. So, you know, he picked 36. Anyway, there's some stuff that has not aged particularly well, so keep that in mind. But I think a majority of the humor is pretty tame, especially compared to, you know, like, I see worse things being said on the internet daily, especially in the year of our Lord 2026.
The year of our Lord.
I mean, geez, you've got like Kanye West making Nazi songs. That like we live in the worst weasel timeline. You know, it's there's all sorts of nasty stuff going around. So I don't particularly think the language is as bad as the MPAA thought in 1994. But I think
I think it was more the sexuality is what drove them to the NC-17.
But I also am going to give it 3 out of 4 shots of whiskey because it's funny. It's a nice quick watch. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't insist upon itself, to quote like Peter Griffin. But
yeah.
But what do you think? Do you think we were not harsh enough towards Kevin Smith's debut? Do you think that our other film is a far better, you know, triumph of Lent or whatever this pairing was? Are you happy we finally revisited these films? Let us know down in the comments if you're listening to this on YouTube
Do you also agree that Kevin Smith was the 37th that Scorsese had to suck?
It would explain a lot. If you're listening to this on a platform that doesn't have comments, you know, feel free to check out any of our backlog of episodes. We've got so many. We've been doing the show for like going on 6 years. So thanks for coming by. Until next time, I've been Whiskey.
I've been Sweet Tea.
Keeping it Kino.
And suck it Scorsese.
38.
Bye, y'all.
Smell you later, guys.
Reels on the Rocks is a production of La Prince Laboratories. It is edited and produced by Alejandro Castillo and programmed by Jamie King. Original music is provided by Pat Mars and original artwork by Ace Esparza.